I'm getting so much Tucker Carlson vibes from this right now. I might not be able to hear it. You might not be able to hear it. But if dogs start running in your direction, dogs are hearing it. But we're not talking about crimes. We're not talking about taking away someone's rights, someone's freedoms, putting them in prison. We're not talking about that.
This is not a dog whistle. So what is? What are people telling you that you should think about it? And why am I telling you that you should mostly just put it out of your mind? Well, let's start first.
I gotta give it props. I like the 80s, like, soundboard fucking vaporwave aesthetic. That's cool. I dig with it. Okay. But so far, I obviously believe dog whistles are a fucking thing to pay attention to. Throughout history, they have been used by political leaders incessantly to try to get people to move to their specific positions over and over again. So,
First things first. What exactly is a dog whistle? Well, a physical dog whistle looks a little something like this. It's a metal
well, that's not a literal dog whistle, just for everyone knows. You can't hear dog whistles. They're like supersonic. So, should have gotten a dog whistle. They're like $4 on Amazon. Come on. You got this.
tube, you blow into it and it makes a noise. The problem is that most people can't hear you. To most people, it just sounds silent. But to dogs, it sounds just like this did. They can hear it, but most people can't.
True.
This
That's how dog whistles
underlying analogy is the basis of the dog whistle. It is a political concept for a speaker being able to send a message group to their chosen audience while leaving most observers out in the cold, none the wiser as to what he actually means.
An interesting thing about dog whistles that it's not just like a political concept. I think it started from like sociological surveys where they've noticed that when they ask specific questions, some participants, or what are they called when you interview someone? Subjects? I don't know. Whoever you fucking interview would get different understanding from different questions or different phrases that others wouldn't. In a way, they heard something. They recognized something that the rest didn't see. And that's kind of where the idea of dog whistles became like prominent in like language. I think it was in the 1980s. So that's really where dog whistles began. And of course, there's evidence of this. I mean, I'm sure John knows, and most of you know, in the 1960s and 70s, people used dog whistles all the time. Subjects, okay. Scott says subjects.
Or in other cases, suspecting what that speaker means, but not being able to demonstrate it because the explicit words, the literal meaning, does not portray the message that the speaker is trying to send. Another term for a dog whistle is implicature. It essentially allows the person to say controversial things without actually having to say controversial things, allowing for the meaning to get across with none of the responsibility. Sounds like pretty nasty stuff, right? So understandably, a lot of people are telling you that you really need to care. After all, it's a way for people to secretly send nefarious messages right under.
I'm getting so much Tucker Carlson vibes from this right now. In other words, you need to care. It sends so many other messages, like the cadence is 1 for 1. It's so funny. I'm going to go ahead on a limb and say why I think you should care for dog whistles. Going to preemptively go here. It helps you understand who the person that is talking, who are they appealing to? Because they're obviously appealing to you, but they're also appealing to another group. It lets you recognize who their political interests are, who they need for support, who maintains their power, who maintains their effect and influence in Congress. And those people, right, they don't just speak to you. They speak to everyone else. It's important to know who garners support for them, who are the players, who are the producers, who are the key players that they're talking to. those are the people who are really important to focus on.
Under our noses. And you know what? They're not all wrong. Dog whistling does exist. There's historical examples of people saying one thing, meaning another, and knowing that that's how it will be understood, or that how it will be affected, or that's the effect that it will have. My fellow Pangburn co-host Dandan Prager had a recent video on dog whistling with a historical sample such as this. In the example, a politician had a racist intent with non-racist wording, and he later admitted what he really meant on tape later, admitting explicitly to his intent. And this is certainly a problem. We certainly wouldn't want people in the public eye to be able to say or contribute such meanings to the discourse with complete impunity, without being able to be confronted in the war of ideas accurately. So why exactly am I telling you that you should probably just ignore it? Well, it's because...
Okay, so I really want to hear... No, Taurus, you didn't miss the vegan. I'm trying to set that up with Fleur. I might talk to a vegan because of Fleur. Even Tart's here. Oh, this is great. You did not miss the vegan, but that might be happening. I don't know if it will or if it doesn't. Let me just message Fleur right now because we're in the middle of the video. That can wait. My ADD is pulling us together. But like I said, that's one of the reasons why I think dog whistles are important to pay attention to, because they let you who are the key players, who are the people that the political leader needs to maintain in power, who they're catering to. So recognizing those dog whistles, having a keen ear to them, can let you know about what your politician, the person in your life, who they're speaking to, where they're being duplicitous and where they aren't.
Because of actually what the other people are saying. You see, the danger of the dog whistle is that there's no hard evidence to show what the person actually means. That's the whole point. The whole point is that it's veiled, that you can't pin it down, that you can't prove it based on the words alone. That's the design, that's the point. It's what a dog whistle is. And so by its nature then, you could not take the message alone and demonstrate with any level of reasonable certainty that that nefarious message...
With no level of reasonable certainty? I think that you could... I think I've showed it, that Tucker Carlson was absolutely dog whistling when he was talking about the Great Replacement. No reasonable certainty? There is a level of reasonable certainty we're looking for. Now, remember, everyone, we're not talking about putting someone away in prison. We're not talking about the judicial systems. We're talking about a level of certainty that can inform you about the beliefs and actions of the person you're talking to, or that he's talking to you, or the preacher or the political pundit. These people, right, who do this shit, and like our political pundits, they're speaking to a specific group. And if they're dog whistling, it lets you know what their intentions are. You can figure this out to a specific level of certitude, like Tucker Carlson, The Great Replacement. Yeah, it's not a bad... you say it's a bad example for you. It's not at all. Look at his base. Look at the people who fund him and Trump. Look at the Confederate flags flying at January 6th, Trump rallies and the like. Socialists and Marxists do this as well. They'll dog whistle all the time. I'm sure you could pick up on it a lot.
Actually exists. Let me give you an example of how hard it is to actually know if somebody's dog whistling. All right,
See, this is where it's gonna get. This is where we're gonna disagree. Actually, dog whistling. What does that mean to actually dog whistle? There's a level of certitude that we're trying to get to. You're not always gonna get that level of certitude. I'm not looking for beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm looking with the preponderance of the evidence. Is there evidence to show that they're dog whistling? Is there implications to show that they're dog whistling? Who is their base? Who shows up to their rally? What are the talking points around their supporters that can help us understand who's listening to it? If I blow a dog whistle, I might not be able to hear it. You might not be able to hear it. But if dogs start running in your direction, dogs are hearing it.
A dog whistle off screen. I'm gonna blow it for a second. Or maybe I won't. I don't know. You have to tell me. You have to guess. Ready? Let's go.
You blew it. I heard you blow it.
Okay. Are you sure? Do you know? What if I said something you didn't like politically? What then? Okay, let me try again. How about now? You think I blew a dog whistle?
John, this is like the worst example ever. Just give an example of a dog whistle. Actually, use your creativity. Make one up. Like here, I'll help you out here. Let's think. Oh, I got it. I got a great one. Right? My problem is not that I'm anti-immigrant, right? I'm always for the immigrants. I love the immigrants. The immigrants love me. But this is not an issue of immigration. This is an issue of states' rights. Should the federal government have a right to tell me what I can or cannot do at my border? What's happening here? Sure, we're talking about states' rights, but am I dog whistling to racists? Am I talking to people who are anti-immigration and saying that I'm not anti-immigration? Was that a dog whistle? Was it not a dog whistle? Let's see. Who are my supporters? Who are the base that puts me in power? Are those people who don't like immigration, who fan around slogans like American nationalism, Christian nationalism? Is that who I'm talking to? I might be blowing a dog whistle. That way the centrists, those who I need the votes for a general election, don't notice.
We're not sure? This is the problem. The whole point of the dog whistle is that there is no actual evidence except in the speaker's mind. It's an intent crime, essentially. It's notoriously difficult to demonstrate. That's, score one for the nefarious dog whistlers, but there comes another problem. Is that aspect of the dog whistle also puts a point to the people crying dog whistle. Because you see, if the whole point of the accusation is that it's something secret and undetectable that leaves no evidence, well then, there's no difference between accusing a dog whistler of dog whistling and accusing a person just speaking their mind of dog whistling. How to tell the difference?
I just went over it.
Well, one way is get them to admit their intent or provide evidence of their
True.
intent.
We can do that.
The other way is a much harder case of trying to show a pattern, of trying to show how the message is received, of showing the person speaking intentionally ignoring how it's received or refusing to condemn that particular interpretation and doing it for years and years and years and years. And then maybe you have half a case. Because at the end of the day, there's multiple potential explanations for that pattern of behavior other than his intent.
Music a tiny bit lower, John. A tiny bit lower. I'm losing you over the music. I'm like super vibing into it.
I tend to have a pretty high burden of proof about these things. I am a staunch believer that we should assume good faith wherever possible, unless it's reasonably impossible to do so, unless it's been proven to be bad faith beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, many might...
I called it. You're going to look for a reasonable doubt. I called that John was going to look for a reasonable doubt here. I don't think we're going to be able to find reasonable doubt in many of these cases, right? We're talking about a person's mind state, a person's intention. That's really fucking hard to prove. That's not the burden that I'm looking for with dog whistles, nor I think you should look with dog whistles. I think when we talk with human beings and we're interacting with human beings, we don't suspend judgment just if we have beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a lot, I think. That's asking a lot of something that's, even a thing.
Call this naive, and I understand that, but I do think it's a misunderstanding what the word naive means. Naive is an idea of optimism born of ignorance. And if I haven't demonstrated this across the course of the video so far, I'm sorry, but I am not ignorant about what dog whistling is. I am well aware that it exists. I'm well aware that it probably exists quite a lot right now. But the problem is that I'm also aware that there are many people who aren't dog whistling. Which is why I assume good faith anyway. It's not out of ignorance. It's not naivete. I'm doing it.
I don't think that you have to intentionally dog whistle. I think people do a lot of unintentional things all the fucking time. Right? That's a very important thing to pay attention to. A lot of times people are smart, they're socially aware, and they'll just not want to say things that sound bad. They'll try to use language that doesn't ring up any bells or sound any alarms. And that's how the dog whistle actually happens.
Even though I'm knowing the danger, I could be wrong. I like to think of that as a kind of courage, but maybe I'm being a little self-flattering. And the reason I do that is because the very risk that comes along with dog whistling, the divisiveness that comes with it, the confusion of meaning and language and accurate communication, the hate, the division, the divisiveness, all of that danger is equal, if not more so, in the risk of accusing people who are dog whistling who aren't doing it.
Well, then how do we deal with people who say things like super predators in the 90s? How do we deal with folks like Nixon, Ehrlichman, Lee Atwater? How do we deal with Tucker Carlson? How do we deal with David Duke? How do we deal with all these people who show up to your doorstep, knock proverbially on your door, whether it be through advertising, social media, and literally dog whistle, saying two things simultaneously? So a specific group hears it while not ringing up any bells with other people. These people do it all the time.
Because that's a means of demonization, of demonizing legitimate concerns by reading in an underlying nefarious meaning or intent. Now, I'm sure I hear you saying, but John, of course, there are some people who are dog whistling. Your standard will let people slip through the cracks. Yeah, it will. And our legal system assumes innocent before guilty.
But we're not talking about crimes. We're not talking about taking away someone's rights, someone's freedoms, putting them in prison. We're not talking about that. We're talking about an asshole standing on a podium using rhetoric that literally inflames and takes together people who are fucking psychos. We don't want that person sitting there getting away with saying that. We should be aware of who the players are in this political guy's pocket. No. Who are the players that are affecting this political player's pockets? That's who we need to worry about.
And we're let guilty people slip through the cracks all the time because we know it's just as big of an injustice for false verdicts, and we find freedom just so sacred. And it's a similar scenario here. I find free speech sacred, and I realize that getting it wrong in the other direction is also an injustice, as much as letting dog whistling go is.
Well, don't people have the right to call out dog whistles? To say, hey, that's a dog whistle? Isn't that my freedom of speech? Isn't that sacred? No, I'm not advocating. I don't know if people are, but I'm not advocating on jailing people for dog whistling. I'm advocating for calling it out when I believe it to be true. I advocate for calling it out in the, as your show is called, the war of ideas, which I don't like that term anyhow, but that's another thing. I don't like that term anyhow, but freedom of speech is sacred. And as so, gotta call a duck a duck. You gotta call a dog whistler a dog whistler.
As well. And so that's why the dangers of going after it without sufficient evidence to demonstrate it are just as bad, if not worse, than the crime itself. So what do I...
Is it worse than the crime itself to accuse someone of something if you think you have evidence for it and it happens to be false? I don't know. That's an interesting point. Is it worse to tell, hey, I think you're dog whistling when they're not? Is that worse than actually doing it? I don't think so.
Recommend for you personally? Well, I'm going to borrow a bit of Stoic wisdom here. You always have the option of having no opinion. So next time you hear a narrative call a certain policy or concern xenophobic or racist, you don't have to think of it that way. Think of it as nationalistic or patriotic.
Oh, I hate nationalism. We're going to have to talk about nationalism. I think nationalism is one of the worst fucking things humans do. It's horrific. Coming from a nationalist country as Israel into a nationalist country as America, with grandparents who escaped a nationalist country like Germany, seeing the nationalist country like Japan and China. No, nationalism is a problem. Humanism, good. Nationalism, badge. Wait, a dragon ate the croissant? What the fuck? I didn't get a picture of this? Bullshit.
Or on the other side, you don't have to think of things as crazy or resentful or chaotic. You can think of them as genuine concerns for the downtrodden. You can think of them as empathetic. You can believe that the empathy is pathologized. You can believe that the nationalism or the patriotism is not good in this case. That's fine. But let's stop with the demonizing labels for no reason. Let's stop with the assumption of malice when you simply don't have the evidence. I know it would be nice. I know this is not popular to say on the internet. I know we all really like judging each other and assuming everybody who disagrees with us is the worst person in the world. I get it. I know. I'm part of it.
You are the worst person in the world, John.
I try to stop. I try not to, but you know. But you don't have to be a part of it. You always have the option of having no opinion. You always have the option of having.
This is like Kyle/Stan at the end of South Park. Why can't we all just live together, guys? You know? Not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. I appreciate the optimism.
High burden of proof and just waiting for the evidence to come or to go. You don't have to be part of the cycle of communication and rhetoric. You don't have to be part of the death of the logos.
Death of the logos. Oof. I know Perry loves the concept of the logos. I actually think the logos is this mythical anthropomorphization of like taking people say you get lost in the sauce. I think logos a bit lost in your own cerebral fluid type of energy.
Judicious in deciding whether or not somebody is acting in bad faith if they're dog whistling. You don't have to feed into the problem. You can take people at their word unless you have a really good reason not to.
Exactly. Unless you have a really good reason not to. If they, make a lot of money from those people who they're whistling to, right? So there's plenty of good reasons why I should not trust someone like I don't know, let's see people who we don't trust. People who have tons of financial gain from appealing to a specific group of people who happen to run.
So next time somebody runs up to you, grabs you by the arms in the middle of the woods and says, "Don't you hear that blaring dog whistle from that person behind the tree?" You look around and you hear nothing. You don't have to agree with them. You can just shrug and say maybe and keep on walking.
True. If people come and just tell you don't you hear it and you don't listen to them. But, let's do a little logos in here. Talk to them. Run through it. Why are they hearing it? Why do they think they're hearing it?
Because if we don't do that, more rhetorical confusion. We'll have a lot more division. We'll have a lot more paranoia. We'll have a lot more divisiveness. We will have much less true speech. We will be damaging the logos in a shaking.
So you know what interests me about this, like logos first as like the directional, the force that impacts the way like social cohesion exists in society. The reason why I have an issue with this concept and with this application of the logos, it seems for me to have no like pragmatic or scientific utility. The reason I say that is because we can't like analyze the logos in any meaningful way and draw a conclusion about its effects on society. It's all post hoc rationalizations. But I think what really does matter are analyses that take into consideration material conditions, real brute facts about the world, distribution of wealth, distribution of resources, distribution of power. And what's interesting here is that I'm sure that you would agree that the worst type of like libtards or leftists are those who think that by putting more black women on screen, we're going to end racism. Those who believe that if we have equal representation on ads or whatever it is, will abate and end discrimination or anti-homeless thing, or if we put more transgender people on beer cans, will somehow help anti-trans sentiments in the world and abate the discrimination and systemic problems that trans people are facing. Those people have the same idealistic notion of like reason, truth, logos, conversation as actually affecting the world, where I think that rational choice theory, this reason, is not what actually moves the world, but is an emergent phenomena of real material properties and relations of the extended world. It's a manifestation of that, not that which causes it or directs it in a way.
Passerbys, trying to get them to understand the secret message that is being silently blown. Maybe you're right. Find some evidence.
Find some evidence.
Show me the intent.
Okay.
But until then, let's not.
Okay, this is repeating itself. Oh, is this black screen at this point?
Hey,
oh, it's not.
That's courage. Because right now we're not doing that. And right now, in terms of our rhetorical situation, things are not good. So, pick your... I invite you to join me.
Oh, a wink. What is this? You trying to riz the audience? Okay. That was fun. That was cool. Good job, John. Good video. We'll talk more about it, I guess, Saturday. Have a conversation. Hopefully we'll try to hear each other and actually like engage in conversations with one another.